Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 174. Today, we are going to learn how to press play through fear and stress about logging in and playing competitive. In this case, or in this particular question today, about Overwatch competitive. But we deal, of course, with the same principle in pretty much any ranked game that has an online ladder. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about ambition and mesocycle training for esport. Welcome to the Ask Weldon Show. My name is Weldon, and this is the show where you ask me questions about peak performance, mental health, life, or whatever it is you like. I'm a sports psychology trainer who works with professional esport athletes. I have a master's in sport sciences degree in sport and exercise psychology. That does not make me a psychologist, just FYI. I usually put this out here about every single time I can correct somebody on it because sometimes I see all these mislabelings. But anyway, I don't deal with diagnosable issues, and I can't legally deal with diagnosable issues. So if you are depressed, make sure you see a licensed therapist, not an internet therapist. But that's a good advice for pretty much any life situation, not to see an internet doctor for any sort of, or an internet lawyer or an internet anybody, when you can replace that with a real person that you can see face to face and ensure their credentials are above board. All right, but I don't have any other updates. The baby still has not come. We're still on 3 kids. The 4th kid is incubating yet, and I'm sure that I will be missing one of these shows, or maybe 2 days of these shows when this actually happens. So please stock up on your. If you notice that there's no YouTube upload and Twitch does not go live, by the way, I'm streaming this live on Twitch, so come join us, twitch.tv/mindgamesweldon, every single morning, or evening actually, LA time, 7:30 p.m. LA time. If you notice that there's no upload for the day, dive into my back catalog. Go find a video that you haven't watched yet. Go down the playlist, the Ask Weldon playlist, to the point where you haven't seen, and just click start. Or check out my backlog of full Twitch VODs, which include not only the show that is on YouTube, but also a massive pre and post show that has a bunch of interesting questions that I answer in them. And wish me luck, because I will be very busy. My second baby I actually delivered myself. So we kind of got sent home from the hospital a little early, or maybe a little late, depending on how you look at it, and then the baby came. So I just did the delivery right there in my own apartment, while the ambulance was frantically on its way. No problem. I paid really close attention to the first one, so it was easy mode for me. I think my wife was the one doing all the work, as far as I could tell. But yeah, so this one, I'm hoping, again, like the third one, to be able to sit back a little bit, not necessarily get my hands dirty, but I'm there if need be. And no other updates, so we should jump into the first question. These questions, by the way, call-ins at anchor.fm/Weldon Green. You just go in your Anchor app, which you download at anchor.fm/Weldon Green, and you can click plus message. There's a little thing that's a plus in a circle and a message, the word in English, and then you can call in like an audio question. You just click the button and raise the phone to your head. You say the question, and I have it here in this beautiful web interface, integrated right with the podcast player and podcast everything that I can use to play your question for our beautiful Twitch audience and YouTube audience. So let's jump into this first question from Travis.
Sometimes when I get on Overwatch, I'll be really nervous about playing competitive. I'll be afraid of losing my SR, even though I know it's the wrong mindset and I should focus on wanting to improve. But there's some things you can't help by yourself. Any tips for getting over that mentality?
Very well-spoken, well-put question. Thank you so much, Travis. Sorry that I didn't get to this yesterday, by the way. The NALCS playoffs, or final day, was being decided, and I logged in with the intention of having this show, and it's going to be a day delayed because I just ended up watching Team Liquid lose to TSM and get 4th place. All right. Continuing on with the answer. So I have an entire article about this called Learning to Press Play. And it's basically about the fear of that moment when you're that moment of conviction when you push the play button and you volitionally choose to say, I will risk losing skill rating or points or ELO or whatever it is in order to try to obtain some. Or I will step into the arena, or I will step into the competitive zone. Now, this is a very, very important moment and one that you need to master as a competitor and as a gamer, because it is going to happen at every single point in your life. It is reflected when you are learning a language. It is reflected when you're in a meeting and you need to be the one to talk. It is reflected when you have that moment walking down the hall when you see somebody bullying somebody for their sexuality or looks, and you need to be the one to step in and say, that's not okay. It is reflected at all of these moments in life when you have the opportunity to become somebody instead of nobody, and you have to push the play button. And so practicing it now in for example, an online video game is an eternal it's an eternal moment, okay? It's not just like a passing moment, right? It's not just some passable skill. It's actually a social and emotional skill that you can hone now that will impact you and who you are for the rest of your life. So I highly recommend thinking about this moment seriously and not trying to run away from it. So here's ways that people run away from it and avoid it. Number one, they don't do it. They only play normals. They never step into the arena. Theodore Roosevelt would have something to say about you. And if you ever want to hear an epic quote about stepping into the arena, let's just look it up right now. Ted Roosevelt Arena. Let's see if I can find this quote. The man in the arena. Here we go. Yeah, so you're stepping into competitive. You're willing to be judged, and he says this. He has this to say about you. It is not the critic who counts. That is the people who are flaming you, by the way. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. So when you're in the hallway and you say, don't bully that person, but you do it very awkwardly and everybody's like pointing at you and laughing. It is not them. Or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. So it doesn't matter if you mess up, in other words. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms and great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. All right, so you do not want to be one of those cold, timid souls, and the way that you change that about yourself is right here with the play button, okay? So treat it seriously. What do I mean by that? Do not avoid it. So here's how people avoid it. First of all, they don't even do it. Bad. Why is my camera out of focus? Here I am failing in the arena. All right. Secondly, they avoid it by pretending that it's not important, right? So they put off the stress till they're in the game. So they just click the play button without thinking. They're just like, they're trying to, they gloss over it, right? They don't think of themselves putting in queue, or they quickly do it. They have a rule like, as soon as they get in game, mash that play button and don't even think about it. Just don't think about it. Don't think about it. And then they get into the queue, and then they're really stressed when like the game is loading up, right? So I want you to look at the button, see the texture of it, appreciate the moment when you make the decision and then decide to step into the arena for your own purposes and face competitive judgment. Not just judgment from yourself, which is the worst, but judgment from peers as well, because that's what you're really afraid of. All right, so now to address the question of getting over fear of losing skill rating, that in particular is the fear that should drive you, like that's the gamble you're making, right? But what you're really afraid of is that it will expose you. Not that you're afraid of losing skill rating. It's that you're afraid that you're not good enough to deserve the higher skill rating, and that losing the skill rating is actually really the direction you should be going, and that's who you are. So what you're facing here, Travis, is an identity crisis. If you were the same person secure in your own skill, with or without the skill rating, you wouldn't necessarily care about losing it or gaining it. You would just think, eventually I'll be whatever rank that I'm supposed to be because I am this good or I am that bad. Or if you were spending time, or you might not be facing an identity crisis in that way. So, okay, pause. Let me deal with this identity crisis thing, then I'll explain another thing that could be happening, okay? You need to accept the fact that that is who you are. If you lose skill rating and you go on a 9-game losing streak, you were the person who was going to go on a 9-game losing streak. You are that bad compared to the opponents, and that's just the case, okay? And that has to be okay. It has to be okay that there are people that are better than you and worse than you, and it has to be okay that you are in it for the long run, for the long haul, and that you are improving every day. And just because you are not good enough today doesn't mean that you're not going to be good enough someday, one of my mantras, and that eventually you are good enough to prove that, like, what you want to do is to be good enough to show with your actions that you deserve your position in the ranking, and not through some label like skill rating. Okay, it has to be your in-game play, not the variations of ELO and recording on the outside that are relevant. Okay, the second thing, let's see if I can remember now because it popped into my head and went away. The second thing is that you might be frustrated and regretting the time that you spent gaining the skill rating, that you see that you have something and now that you're losing it, and you think, all that time I spent to get that thing and now it's evaporating. And so what is painful to you is this time that you cannot get back. And what that says to me and to everybody else is it was time misspent in the first place. If you so value that time that it was that you wished you would be doing something else, then losing it is twice as painful, right? But if that is the thing, if like gaining the skill rating in the first place, playing those games the other day, like let's say last Saturday, you played 10 games, you gained 10 skill rating, 100 skill rating, whatever it is, whatever your values are. And then today you're losing it and you're like, oh, all that time I spent gaining it, all the time I spent playing those games is all wasted. If that is your mindset, you need to square away why you're spending this time in the first place, okay? Because it needs to be intrinsically valuable in and of itself that you are choosing to spend time on this matter and playing this game without the accumulation of the skill rating. It should be that what you gained was something above and beyond the skill rating, like experience or competitive experience or enjoyment or escapism or joy or just skill, like if you're training instead of doing escapism, or time well spent or socializing with friends. You have to find the intrinsic value in what it is that you're doing online in this game that is independent of the gaining and losing of these skill ratings, so that your time and the usefulness or lack of usefulness of your time is not delegated to be through, it is not defined through resource collection, if that makes sense. This is a life or death matter, okay? Why do I say it's a life or death matter? Because you're choosing to spend your time on this, and this is the only time that you have. Okay, you live a life. You were alive for some 80 to 100 odd years, and tomorrow you're one day closer to dead than today, and you're choosing to spend it on an online video game. You must raise the importance of what you're doing to make that time that you spent not useless to you mentally and emotionally. So there's two ways to do that. I do this program called the MAC program, which is labeled Mindfulness, Acceptance, Commitment, and it's about finding peak performance in everyday events and all-inning on life, basically. It's about this particular concept. And what I find, or the comments that I usually get from people who complete the program and are doing the program, are, number one, I quit playing video games because they're like, this is life or death, and I'm not doing the thing that I'm doing with my life. I just had a guy stop by the stream this morning who's like, hey, just wanted to stop by the stream and say, I'm busy and I'll see you later, because through his own work on himself, he's realized what he wants to do and he wants to get back to the grind, but he wanted to say hi and thank you, and check in and then go back to his passion, right? So uncovering and discovering your passion and making sure that you're all in on it is crucial. I had a second point. I don't even remember where I was going with that. But my point is, oh yeah. So people say they quit video games, and then other people say that they started ranking up and really really being able to all in on their video games, and that through their intensity and training of their video game, the correct way, they were able to develop social and emotional skills that they apply to other areas of their life. So they were able to become a better student, become a better son or daughter, become a better parent, become a better boyfriend or girlfriend, become a better employee, because they were treating this thing seriously, because it was necessary in order to treat their training seriously. Like you have to treat your studies seriously so that you can accomplish them, so you can finish them, so you can go train with the same mindset. So those are the things that like the Mac program kind of shows, is this idea of this moment of pushing play is literally everything, because you're choosing to compete and put yourself in the arena. You're choosing for the next few minutes to do this with your life instead of something else, and it is life or death, because this is the time that you have. And so that is why you're afraid. It's an existential fear. And you need to make that fear real and then face it like a man. I'm saying man. I'm assuming your gender, Travis. Sorry. If you're a female watching this, like a woman, and accept the wonderful consequences of your actions. I don't mean consequences in a negative sense. I mean the wonderful consequences of your action. And take all of that decision and pent-up emotion and reality, like the depth of your understanding of that moment, and put it into what you're doing. And you will have the best video games you've ever played if you keep that mindset. All right, now I'm getting all hot and bothered. Got to take my jacket off. Finally warming up on this show. Hope that was helpful, Travis, and thank you for this question. It is one of the fundamental questions of my brand. It's one of the first articles that kind of came out. I think it was from a writer, actually, on my blog, not even me, but it might have been, yeah. But boy, is it an important idea, and I'm glad that you were able to bring it up for everybody here. Let's dive into question number 2.
Hi Weldon, Thomas here. So my key question is, how can I find my passion when my ambitions don't line up with my hobbies? So, for some context here, for the longest time I wanted to be one of the best writer-directors in history, and I used to really enjoy writing, but I felt that it wasn't enough to just be able to write the stories. I wanted to be able to draw them as well. So I gave up writing to study art for 6 years, but realizing you can't specialize in both, I've come back to writing, but I find that I don't enjoy the process as much anymore. Now, I still want to be the best at something, but I find that the things that I'm intrinsically motivated to do aren't necessarily recognized by a wider society, and wouldn't necessarily fulfill my ambition of wanting to put a dent in the annals of history. So my question is, how can I find or reignite my passion so that I can fulfill my ambition?
Okay, thank you for this great question, Thomas. And I love how at the end, this is important for everybody who's listening, he said, find or reignite, because it could be that we're not going to be doing any reigniting here, and we're going to be finding a new one. So this is a question of discovering the difference between ambition versus it would be nice if. And by that I mean that, like, we think a lot of things would be nice if, and we confuse them with an ambition, with a desire. They're like, oh, it'd be so nice if I was high rank. And then we're in pain when we're not high rank, even though our actions do not map to our desire. So we're like, oh, it would be so nice if I was high rank, but I never play the game. I just want to play it on the weekend and be high rank. Okay, well, then that's not an ambition that you have. That would just, it would be nice if. Oh, it would be so nice if I was I'm going to jump on you, Thomas. I'm sorry about this, but it's a really good example for the question for the people who are watching, right? It would be so nice if I was a famous playwright, but I don't sit down and write plays for 3 to 5 hours a day. So it would be nice if, that does not sound like a real ambition, right? It would be so nice if I was ripped and muscular, but you don't go to the gym 5 days a week and control your diet. So that's not an ambition. That is a, it would be nice if, we just want the thing because we see it on Instagram, we see it on YouTube, we see it on The Voice, we see it wherever. And we think it would be nice if we think about how nice it would be. But it doesn't map to our actions. So look at your actions, right? And see where they're mapping. So the number one, so now getting back to the actual question, right? So this is the difference between ambitions and it would be nice ifs. The number one way I have for helping people uncover their ambition is to map their behavior out like 10 years. What is it you're doing right now? Like actually doing. Like what is it you're doing every day instead of whatever? That's the thing that you're motivated to do. So what if you did that like all in, in a like focused and global kind of way? So for me, it was coaching. I realized that like I really enjoyed teaching English, but I didn't really enjoy the English part. I just enjoyed the teaching part. I enjoyed bringing people to that moment. And I really enjoyed going to the gym because 21 years as an athlete, I was pretty addicted to fitness. And when I got back into the gym, I just loved the feeling of teaching myself things in my body. I loved reading, fitness things on the internet. I loved everything about it. I was like, man, I wish I was a trainer or a coach. I wish I was a sports coach instead of a teacher. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, now I'm a sports coach. So I quit teaching and I started sports coaching. And then I was a pretty bad coach in terms of the... Actually, that's not true at all. I was a pretty amazing coach, both physically and I had like an emotional intelligence too that I could use. But then eventually I injured an athlete and I was like, ooh, got to be a better coach. So then I focused on being a better coach, and then finally this crux came where I was supporting the family, with a day job that I was trying to be passionate about, but could not be passionate about. And then I was doing this other thing. And I was like, well, what am I doing every day? What am I doing with my free time? What am I doing with my mind space? And it was all geared toward esport. It was not geared toward the job I was teaching in the university. It was not geared toward research. It was not geared toward studying. It was not geared toward being an athlete myself. It was not geared toward anything. It was geared toward coaching esport and doing amateur esport and professional esport. So I quit my job, took the jump, took the risk, and all in on that. And I think that uncovering of my passion was basically just for 10 years, I paid attention to what I was doing. Just literally like what I was doing. And I mapped out my behavior for 10 years. I said, if I do this for 10 years hard, where would I end up? And then I was like, well, I guess that's my ambition then, So I took like my actual motivation in the day and I just said, this is what I'm motivated to do. So why don't I do it harder and harder and harder? And then I don't know what my ambition is. So I'll map out my behavior 5-10 years and I'll see that this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm building. And so I did that. And then I had a conception of it. And that long-term vision helped actually fuel even the short-term action at that point. And there's a lot of survival things you have to do in the meanwhile. Like I had to teach English. I remember I had this huge bout of depression in 2009. And I would literally, and I tried this and it worked and I recommend it, I would force myself to smile. I would wake up, I would walk out, I would force myself to smile from doorway, from the moment I stepped out of my threshold, all the way to the office. And I was riding the bus in Boston at this time. So it was like a 35-minute commute. And I would force myself physically to smile the whole way. And it gave me sustenance to survive the workday. It lifted my depression. It actually works this kind of biofeedback thing. So it helped me to kind of get through that and get back to playing World of Warcraft in the evenings, which is what I was really passionate about at that time. Actually, it was I was applying to jobs. I was applying to coaching jobs, and then I was coaching swimming in the evenings, but it wasn't paying, obviously. And finally, and then I got to the university, and again I had depression, and I just ended up coming back and staying up super late at night, working on my startup the next year, and I didn't get depression the next winter, because I was having so much fun that during the day I was just surviving, and during the night I was like living life, right? So your ambition should be queued up with something that you are doing right now in your life that is so powerful that it lifts your depression. That's kind of how I see it for me personally, because that's what happened. Like it should make you literally unemployable. It should make you a horrible employee of whatever else you're doing, because you are so focused on this other mind space that is all that you want to do. That is your motivation, and you should follow that to your ambition, I believe. Now, your ambition might include seasons, right? Seasons of this and seasons of that. Like if my goal is to affect amateur esport athletes and to allow the practice of esport to not be a waste of time. That is my like ambition, right? But now I'm doing this fitness side. I'm kind of becoming a fitness, like I'm aiming towards becoming a fitness, vlogger essentially, because I want to kind of focus in a lot more on what I'm doing in the gym, and for that I need to spruce up my body. So that's like a season, right? So what I'm motivated by is doing the streaming and doing that. And at times I was a writer, at times I was an audio producer. At times I was a videographer. Now I'm a video producer because I'm producing the video. I'm not editing it anymore. It's all like done through OBS. So I think that you can have seasons within your ambition, and it doesn't necessarily detract from the other skill set. But you should focus on what your actual motivation is that day, like the reality of how it is that you want to accomplish your ambition, as a way to figure out what you're doing. And if that somehow dies away, then and your ambition still reigns, if your ambition still reigns but your motivation dies away, then you need to find a different way of expressing that. Okay, now to hit at a final and very important part of your question, which is you want to become globally famous. Essentially, you want to get global attention from your skill at your craft. You will not do that by handpicking your craft and saying, like, this is the thing I'm going to get global attention at and global fame at, and then doing it. That will never happen. It will only happen with something that you are so passionate about that your head is down and you don't even notice it for a long time. And when you lift your head up, you're good at it. That's exactly what happened with my coaching. I think that every single artist and creative will tell you the exact same thing that I just said, which is that if you have an ambition in mind when you're doing your task, and that is the driving force, then you're not going to do the thing in a pure way that leads you to the heights of greatness. You're going to be trying to take shortcuts and not just doing it for the sake of the craft, right? So at some point, you have to put down that work on that craft and lay the foundation for the later ambition. And if you have that ambition that's fueling you every single day, that's great, but it cannot contaminate or stain like your day-to-day motivation, which towards the actual thing, which should be very, very pure. Otherwise, I just do not see the art working out. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know that. I think that that's the case because I obviously am not a world famous artist, but I like to think that I'm one of the best esport psychology trainers in the world, and I got that way by spending 20 years with my head down and accidentally lifted it up, and then here I was. Like I just was like, okay, well now I'm doing this, and the 15 years of MOBA playing, actually. I guess it's 14 years. 14 years of playing MOBAs. No, it's totally 15 years, yeah. 2003 to 2018. Yeah, 15 years of playing MOBAs, and the 20 years as an athlete, and the 7 years teaching, and the 6 years as a 4 years as a coach, and the degree, and even my previous degrees all kind of lended to this moment. And then I was like, okay. Then I had to learn business, which was something I had to force myself to do in order to accomplish my other realities, right? But you're always going to have to do those little like things where you're polishing the weakness just enough so that it's not a liability, so you can hone in on your strengths. So it's a long road, and you have to pick a path where you can keep your head down and pick it up every 5 years, and you won't have noticed that you didn't need your ambition to fuel you. but that you're using that to keep you on track. That's kind of how I see it. Use it to keep you on track. Every year, I need to double check what I'm doing and make sure it's still lined up with my ambition and that I'm following my motivation correctly. Because you have a lot of choices, things to say yes and no to, that can confuse you along the way. All right, I've rambled on enough. Let's go to the next question. Thanks, Thomas. This is a question that would take years to answer, but I'm glad that you asked it, and I'm glad that I got to say a little bit of my spiel on it. Question number 3. Last question. Oh, before I jump into the last question, guys, make sure that you check out the Mindfulness Acceptance Commitment Program. This is my program that I have done with the pro team. So I do it in person with the pro teams, right? But for this program, it's an online video course. 50 videos online daily for 50 days. 7 modules for 7 weeks. So 49 videos, and technically 2 of them from the 5th week are not there because there's a 2-day break, so 47 videos, whatever. Anyway, this is the basic 3-premise step to mental resilience and to peak performance, and the ability to kind of all in on your craft on a daily basis and fold that into everything else that you do. So you should be maintaining relationships, and you should be doing studies, and you should be doing whatever else you're doing in your life that you have that are obligations that are put upon you. You should be fulfilling those obligations while still all in on your craft. And the way that you do that is through mindfulness, acceptance, and commitment, or becoming aware of your internal states, not letting them drive you and flail you around like a sheet in the wind, and then leaning into pressure and pain and frustrating points, and then committing yourself to a certain course of action that will get you what you want in the end. And so I see this not as the way to kind of like figure out your ambition, like Thomas was mentioning, or as a specifically just the only way to get over fear of losing skill rating, like in the first question, but it is the overarching connection between those two things where you are able to use your daily motivation to accomplish things that you are not necessarily motivated to do, but that you know you want the long-term consequences of doing on a daily basis. So it's how you kind of can map your motivation onto another act in the day that gets you your ambition, including pressing play in Overwatch and including writing when you know you're going to love writing in 5 years again or in 2 years again, and you want to get good at it in the meanwhile. And so how do you fold your drawing into your writing and kind of do both? That is what this program is all about. And you can check it out, mindgames.gg/MAC. Use the code AskWeldon to get a discount. That is mostly so that I know where people are purchasing it from. This is the code for YouTube and Twitch. Hello, Twitch. And this program directly supports everything I do. I do not have ads. I do not have sponsors. I do not, I have subscribers on YouTube who are paying, and thank you all, amazing Mind Games community there. But let's be real, like 50 subscribers is not going to support a family. Actually, this Mac program doesn't support the family yet. Right now, it only supports the business itself, which is developing the new version of the Mac program, always putting money into the next version of what's happening to try to build it up to be larger and larger and better and more awesome for the people who are in it and who get grandfathered into the next versions over and over again. We're on version 3 right now. Everybody who's purchased it is in it forever, as promised, and you can be too. So make sure that if this is right up your alley, to check it out. Thank you. Okay, last question from Forgus. Did I get that right? Yeah, okay, here we go.
Hi, Weldon. Sorry for my bad Englando. This is the first time I'm speaking in English. So I want to become a professional, and I was using one of your training methods. I was playing 3 hours, resting 1 hour, and taking a break of 10 to 15 minutes between games. Despite hitting Masters 200 LP last season, I'm plateauing for a long time in Diamond 1 and Diamond 2, and when I have a bad week or feel so much frustration, I just stop playing for months. Recently, I watched one of your videos where you talk about Mesoscyles, and I decided to change my training methods. Right now, I'm spamming games all day, and I noticed that because of the amount of games that I'm playing, I'm not feeling angry or frustration like before. But I fear hitting plateau again, and I want you to help me. What would be the best Mesoscycle for someone like me that is high diamond for years and have all day to play and want to become professional? Thank you.
All right. Thank you for asking. So mesocycles for teams and mesocycles for individuals are very, very different. They have different purposes. But ideally, on a team situation, you're still creating mesocycles that are training for the individual. So what is a mesocycle? It's a training period within which you choreograph a number of smaller training periods with the goal of overtraining yourself and then over-resting yourself. So there's this principle in muscular training and in sports training, which goes something like, you overtrain yourself, and then your skill degrades, and then you rest and recuperate, and your body recovers up to a higher average than before, and then you start training again. And you can't wait too long between when you start resting and when you end resting, so that your skill, like your body recovers up to a higher point, and then it will slowly lose that skill if you rest it. So there's a little bit of timing window in there, and they're very individual. So what does a mesocycle look like in esport? Well, it looks like overtraining yourself to the point where you are starting to make too many mistakes and then resting. That's the basic fundamental principle of it, right? So you want to overtrain yourself, and by that, I don't mean just spamming games. I mean spamming games and studying like crazy, okay? When we overtrained in TSM, we didn't just spam games. We did have 3 extra games per day, but we spent 20 to 30 intense minutes reviewing the games after every single one, and we spent an hour in the morning, having a team meeting and laying out goals for the day, and we spent lunch times and meal times like talking about things and strategizing. So it's a full training package, not just spamming games. Okay, it's exhaustive in its approach. Okay, and then the goal being to drive the body to use every single resource at its disposal for improvement, which we did. And then we stop before burnout. We stop at overtraining before people burn out. Before you lose your motivation and quit playing for months, you have to stop. And this is when you start to notice your performance decline. So you're increasing, and then your performance starts to decline or plateau. That's probably a sign that if you're training a lot, right, and you've been improving, it is a sign that you're hitting a point where it's not relevant anymore. Either you're overtrained or the system is broken or whatever. If we were in some sort of sport that had a deliberate training protocol, so it's just violining or chess or tennis or something where we know how to train experts automatically, then we could say whether you're overtrained or whether the system you're using is not working. But anyway, let's just say that you're going to be overtrained. That's when you stop and you rest. And so what does rest look like? It looks like maintenance style, high intensity games of low volume. So you want to play like 1, 2, 3 games a day. In the pro level, we played 6 or 5. And you should relax on the learning, and you should treat them kind of like as a performance, more or less. High intensity, with lots less homework outside of it, and lots less ridicule, and more like a test. Like, how am I doing today? Kind of like you dip your dipstick in the engine and you pull it out and you see the oil level. That's what you're doing. You're playing 3 or 2 like really intense games where you're focused super hard, see the results, and then leave off and do active and passive recovery in your life for maybe 4 to 5 days, where you're going to be sleeping more, you're going to be socializing more, you're going to be meditating more, you're going to be eating super healthy, you're going to be doing everything you can to actively recover your body and to passively recover your body so that you can be ready, so that you can like calcify all the learning from the last 2 to 4 to 6 weeks, however long your mesocycle is, which is dependent on your own body and your own motivation and everything related to your own training. Okay, the length of the mesocycle is predetermined by your robustness, I would say. And there's no good length or bad length. There's just like the reality of you're overtraining yourself right now, so you got to rest and recover. That's what an ideal mesocycle looks like. Ideally, you'll be able to recover from a overtraining in 4 or 5 days, and be fresh and be better and be ready to jump back on the horse and start training again. Ideally, you should never even worry about mesocycles if you can't play more than 6 games a day, more than 6 hours a day. So for most amateur athletes, this is an irrelevant conversation because you are not actually training 5 days a week or 6 days a week for more than 5 or 6 hours. So you're just going to be like, you're not going to actually be able to push yourself to the point of needing to recover in the first place through esport alone. Although in combination with the rest of your life, you could very easily overtrain yourself if you think of like school and relationships and sports, and then you come home and you train esport, then like that's kind of icing on the top that like makes the cake burst into flame. But that's not because of the esport necessarily, and so resting your esport isn't going to recover you when it's really like your life that's overtraining you in that regard. So the mesocycles are not that useful if you kind of have like a balanced approach. I would say if you have a good, healthy, balanced approach to video games, mesocycles are not going to do much for you. You should just try to optimize your training. You should try to optimize your daily training instead, which means like prep with goals before the game, try to accomplish them in the game, and then reflect on them and measure them after the game, which gives you like a learning process at the very least. All right, that's the answer to that question. That's the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. I got to go to the gym, and I will see you all later.